This is The Final Word at Season 17, Episode 1. Adam Collins and Matt Roller with you today, with Jeff back over the weekend. You know what? I've been talking today quite a bit with Daniel Norcross. Not unusual. I'll be talking to Daniel Norcross. He's in Dubai. He's just arrived for the Women's World Cup. Mentioned before that he and Cam Ponsonby will be doing our daily programs out there over the next 3 weeks. And the first thing Daniel said to me upon arrival, can you please sort me out with a NordVPN account? Can you please sort me out with and we will. One way or another, Daniel will sign up to NordVPN because he needs, when travelling, to have access to all of his UK bits and bobs. He needs to watch Antiques Roadshow on BBC. He needs to watch Strictly on a Saturday night. If Daniel can't do these things, he won't be able to function. Even though he's there for work, there are certain needs the man has. And when he's got his NordVPN, that will mean all his paid subscriptions and otherwise will not go to waste. He can use through the virtual private network. He can be where he needs to be, in this case, the UK, even though he's in Dubai.
I actually need to sort one of these out for myself for Multan as well, because in the latest season of Industry, I don't know whether you've watched that HBO BBC show, Industry.
That's back in it.
It's just coming out for a new season. I think it's out today, and I'm not going to have time to watch all of it before I fly on Thursday. So NordVPN for me, I think, as well. Yeah,
well, we'll sort that out, and we'll make a call after we finish the show. Given you're a co-host, you should be able to get an account. But you know what? Even if you weren't a host, even if you just wanted to sign up for 30 days with the money-back guarantee, Nord have just re-signed with us, Heavy, because our people travel a lot, is my sense. And therefore they want a VPN. NordVPN.com/TFW in the show notes. As I say, no risk, 30-day guarantee. Get your best deal. The best deal you'll get is the one you'll get through us, I'm pretty sure. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure it's shit hot. NordVPN.com/TFW. Do as Norcross is doing right now. Do as Heavy will do in Pakistan. Get on board. Get yourself a VPN. Be where you need to be. Right. Segment 2. Cam Green's got a stressy. Fuck me. 4 overs of bowling bumpers in Durham. Out of the Border Gavaskar Trophy in a series that, whisper it, meant nothing. Oh, God, that is such a massive deal. Like, Bretto wrote a piece for The Age saying that, yeah, it's one human being out of 11, but it's the number 4. It's a guy who Cummins is on the record saying they're going to bowl an awful lot more now that they thought his body was good to go again, which isn't unreasonable because even Cummins himself had a series of stress fracture issues. Then by about the age that Green is now, became quite resilient. They were hoping for that. And he is the best gully fielder I've ever seen.
Yeah,
that isn't one fielder or one cricketer you're replacing. It's a series of them. And yeah, he's an all-rounder. That's always the way when your all-rounder goes down. But the added complication that Mitch Marsh is only sort of bowling at the moment, having had that hamstring injury earlier this year, that might change the complexion of the Aussie Test team entirely before they get to Perth on the 22nd of November.
Yeah,
a month and a half from now.
Absolutely, and I mean we've had the Test opening debate has been one of the sort of bizarre subplots of this whole one-day tour. Has been, I was asking Travis Head about it in Nottingham a couple of weeks ago. Whether
what did he say?
He kept his head down as much as he could. He said, I said, are you aware of this speculation? He said, yep, keep the chatter. And I said, is that you've said in the past it's not something you'd be interested in? Are you now? And he was like, I'm not here, not now. I'm not going to dive into this.
They really, really don't want to talk about it. I can guarantee. I can tell you this from behind the scenes. They do not want to talk about, even consider having on the record anything about Head opening. They're leaving every ball alone that they can.
But it will be so interesting. I mean, I suppose, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that there's not been an official diagnosis of stress fracture at the moment. So he has a back problem clearly, and there's a stress related issue. The possibility is thrown up that maybe he could be fit to play as a batter, because I think he's done that in the past for WA in the Shield, I think. And that's something, Jamie Overton's done that for Surrey in the Championship, in the Blast. It's something that, the nature of the back injury is that you can play a long innings as a specialist batter, even if you can't bowl fast with it necessarily.
Mitch Marsh did it in, it's a different form of the game, but in the T20 World Cup when he couldn't bowl, then it's not. I agree. If it's all good for him to bat, he'll bat. But I think the
challenge then is that's a big workload on Marsh, who, as we saw, he bowls for the first time since the IPL at Lords, I think, in that one-day series, and then isn't ready to go for Bristol 2 days later, and ends up being rested from that last game because he's a bit pulled up a bit sore, basically, from bowling in international cricket, bowling in any cricket for the first time. Exactly. So is he realistically going to have any kind of workload to get through? So yeah, all of this chat about 6 best batters, 2 of whom happen to be seam bowling all-rounders, which is fantastic and balances the side, and then the big 3+ line. you then suddenly, maybe the opening debate comes up with Bancroft v Harris v Renshaw again. Maybe Marsh has to bowl a lot of overs. Maybe you are suddenly relying on the main 4 bowlers again primarily. It's a really interesting scenario.
I think Hardy's done well enough over here to just help bolster his stocks at the right time. Aaron Hardy looks every bit a Test cricketer.
He's got great numbers as well, doesn't he?
He does. He's got a century in a Shield final. It won't count for anything, but had a really important game for Surrey a couple of years ago up at Scarborough in a game they needed to win to give themselves a chance of winning the comp that year. So I know he's highly thought of in these parts, but yeah, it's not a stress fracture yet, but whenever you hear the word scan used in the media release, that's a word that you avoid using at all costs until you need to use it, and there'll be a subsequent scan upon arrival in Perth, which will have been and gone by now, I suppose. He would have got back a couple of days ago, so we'll wait for news on that. But it's big. Yeah, specialist opener. Does Bancroft find his way back into the team? All the chat a couple of weeks ago was the idea of almost having the luxury of trying Travis Head there, at being relatively low risk in the grand sweep of things owing to Australia's depth. He's going to open in Sri Lanka anyway. So, well, why not just have him open against India, and if it comes off, it comes off. Personally, I wouldn't do that, but the idea of trying to replace one aggressive left-hander with another, with David Warner no longer being...
And you can see why it's so appealing as well, the idea of Head being 75 not out at lunch on day one of the first test of the series is...
If it comes off, terrific. But now we go to the other end of the spectrum where it's, well, right hand, left hand, Bancroft feels good. Well, watch this space on that. Maybe they do something rogue. A lot of Shield cricket before the first test. Maybe Maxi strums 200 next week against Tassie. He's playing.
Be good for big sales.
He's playing on, good for the book. He's playing on the 8th of October in that first round. I think that's at the G. So
I get you a good bit for the updated paperback version.
Yeah, that's right. But that's I suppose the way that the Australian team set up against India will be different to Sri Lanka. And I mean, it's not what I intended to talk about here, but the fact that Maxwell is playing Shield cricket, it's not unrelated to the Sri Lanka trip that may be in the offing for him if everything went well this summer with his body and everything else that comes up at the end of January and the start of February. That'll be when they go to Sri Lanka, who have become something of a juggernaut in the last few weeks. They always feel that way at Gaul, don't they? But it's their best test year statistically since 2006, and that's in no small part due to the new Bradman, Kamindu Mendez, who's brought up his 1,000th test run in 13 hits. That's the same length of time that it took Bradman. Sutcliffe and Weeks took 12. They're the clubhouse leader. They got there quicker than Bradman. He got there with a 6 to move to 178, which got him to 1,000, then finished on 182 not out. He turned 26 on Monday, so he's right at the point where batters tend to play their best cricket. So he's been picked at the right time when he made his debut against Australia a couple of years ago. An average of 91.3, 500s and 450s in 13 innings at a strike rate of 65, and they've won 6 of the 8 test matches that he's played in, only failing to win at Lords and Old Trafford last month when they were playing against England. So this is why Sri Lanka have found themselves in a position where it isn't at all inconceivable that they could put themselves into a setup against Australia where if they win 2-0, they could be in the World Test Championship final against India. That's the way this table's looking at the moment.
Yeah, particularly with the top 2, India and Australia, obviously playing what's going to be a great series, 5 tests against each other straight before that. You get into a position where it's going to be all mapped out. Sri Lanka will know exactly what they've got to do going into that final series. And it's crazy how quickly cricket can move sometimes. I'm sure it was about 3 weeks ago where people were talking about what a turkey the English summer had been because the tourists had been so poor, West Indies and Sri Lanka, and now we've got England sat fourth and probably pretty much out of the running now for the World Test Championship final, and Sri Lanka looking like an actual, I'd say, pretty reasonable chance to get there. They obviously have a series, I think, in South Africa before, which, again, could be a challenge. But, who's to say they can't go to South Africa and do something? They've done that in the past, in the not too distant past with Kusal Pereira, obviously.
There's a bit to get into here, right? This is the reason why the World Test Championship was initiated, that every test would have something riding on it. And the fact that Sri Lanka were able to knock off England just gave them a little bit of a toehold in where they sat on the table. I think they were 5th before that test.
And that was kind of classic English complacency and exceptionalism, where the World Test Championship for England should have been this great opportunity, really, to get to the final. The first 3 finals of this competition have been played in the UK in conditions that are familiar to them. the fact that they're probably going to not be involved in any of the first three, which will probably be exactly the point where it moves to Ahmedabad, given the way global cricket is going at the moment.
It's next year, it's without a doubt the last one before it's at Ahmedabad every.
So England aren't going to win a World Test Championship final in Ahmedabad. I highly doubt it anytime soon. But yeah, to sort of, I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh by saying that it was just England's approach that meant that Sri Lanka didn't win at the Oval, and they probably didn't get anywhere enough credit for how well they played in that match. But England definitely weren't taking it quite as seriously as they would have been if they were looking to be entirely ruthless and thinking we have to win this game to get to the final. And if England actually cared about this competition, ever spoke about this competition, then I think they probably would be in a pretty good position now, where if they've got good results in the tours this winter to Pakistan and New Zealand, they would be in with a decent chance of the final. Instead, they take their eye off the ball, and suddenly Sri Lanka, who they've kind of not belittled because they've clearly taken them seriously as an opponent through the summer, but they would have gone into that series expecting to beat and probably beat 3-0. Are probably going to sneak in. Well, they're probably going to finish above them at a bare minimum, I'd say.
Yeah, it comes back to the way that England took the piss with their over rates last year during the Ashes. I mean, they've had 19 points deducted in this cycle, and Australia have had 10 points deducted. No one talks about that quite so much, but that's why Sri Lanka are within 7 points on percentage terms. And the reason why India playing Australia is so relevant to this conversation is that there's a distinct possibility that Australia and India will take points off each other, and it's done on match ratio or done on percentage. So, if I haven't done the calcs on this, but I would imagine it would take Australia beating India like 3-1 or 4-1 to shut the door on Sri Lanka, provided Sri Lanka do a halfway decent job in South Africa when they play there at the start of November and December. And look, South Africa, who have named their squad for Bangladesh, haven't included Nortje, haven't included Janssen, haven't included Coetzee. Now, I know that's different conditions and all the rest of it, but we've seen consistently the competing interests for South African Test cricketers and where their T20 franchise commitments slot into all of that. It may well be that does Sri Lanka a favour on the way through. Don't want to put the cart before the horse here or anything, but that's just like, these are the types of things that are now swirling around because Sri Lanka did the business big time against New Zealand in their second test to sweep the series, beating them by an innings and 154. Sri Lanka, 602 for 5 declared. The aforementioned Kamindu, 182 not out from 250 balls. Chandimal, 116. Kusal Mendis, welcome back, Kusal Mendis. He's been off the boil. He's been dropped from the team. 5 minutes there, he looks like he was going to be one of the best players in the world a handful of years ago. 106 not out, batting at number 7.
In the Kamindu spot, because we didn't mention that with the fact that all of those runs from Kamindu, or the majority of those runs, came at number 7, which is unbelievable. Through that series against England, there were all these people saying he's got to bat high, and they were like, they were pretty happy with him at 7. Finally got to the promotion into the middle order and keeps his form up, but yeah, the number 7 spot for Sri Lanka this year has contributed a lot of runs now.
And after all the runs they made, that scoreboard pressure, they bowled out New Zealand inside 40 overs for just 88. Prabath Jayasuriya, 6 for 42, but of course, more about him in a sec. And following on, New Zealand all out 360, so they were defeated by an innings in 154. Phillips, Sartner, Conway, Blundell and Kane Williamson all making contributions, but none of them getting to 3 figures, which was the problem in both of the test matches. Nishan Paris took 6 for 170. He was the other finger spinner Sri Lanka picked for this test. He's a 27-year-old off spinner. All I've seen of him heavy is the highlights from this test. I don't know much about him, but 9 wickets on test debut, that's a lovely way to start.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously a pretty lethal combination by the looks of things with Prabath, whose numbers at home are incredible, and actually incredible.
This is getting out of control, right? So we're carrying on about Kamindu Mendis. Let me give you some Prabath stuff. That was his 16th test match. He's up to 97 wickets. Had he gotten those 3 wickets in this test, had he taken 12, as he did on debut at that ground, he would have been equal quickest to 100 wickets ever with George Lohmann. I mean, he'll probably get there in his next test match, right? All things being equal, which will mean he'll get there in 17, bringing him equal with the Terra Turner, Sid Barnes, Clary Grimmett and Yasir Shah. Ashwin, who was the quickest Indian to 100 test wickets, got there in 18 test matches. This is completely mental. As for Gaul, for Jayasuriya, 71 wickets in 8 tests. So he took 9 this week, which is basically his average at this ground at Gaul, even more mental. So, for all of that, this is what puts them right there and thereabouts. Who knows what might happen if they get the job done in that series against South Africa, with the gap with them in Australia, as I mentioned before, at 6.94%. So that's quite exciting. I mentioned India having consolidated their position at the top of the table. An extraordinary win heavy over Bangladesh. You paid more attention to this than me. There was all sorts going on at Kanpur with the rain and the wet outfield, which denied them 2 days' play, and a record annihilating Test victory when it looked like there was no chance of it deep into day 4.
Yeah, they just to read out the stat from, this is crediting Bengana from Wisdom, only 3 times in Test history has a team faced fewer balls to win a match. I looked at my phone on the way into work yesterday and saw that India were 40 for none, and figured they would have. I was like, this test seems to be moving pretty quickly. Figured that would have been 10 overs in or something like that. I think that was in the 3rd over. I think they got 50 in 3 overs on the 4th evening of that game. They basically came out and played like a T20, played even shorter, almost like it was shorter than a T20 at times. Some of those guys, Kohli and KL Rahul sometimes don't bat with that much aggression in a T20 game.
If India could have KL Rahul's strike rate yesterday, the World Cup a year ago, they would love it from the final, for sure.
But yeah, it was pretty remarkable stuff. And I mean, that I think that again probably goes back to some extent to the World Test Championship being a good thing generally, because as if India would have batted like that if they didn't have something on the line.
Hugely incentivised to do what they did, right? They probably made the evaluation. So just to go through how this played out, if you didn't follow it via the scorecards or on telly, Bangladesh was stuck on 107 for 3 days. It started raining on day 1, rained on day 2. There was so much rain on the surface that the umpire said the ground wasn't fit on day 3, which was a storyline that was worth going into. The BCCI vice president was asked about this, and he gave it the old, everyone bags us for everything. We're the BCCI, woe is us. Well, any other country that has a ground with no rain that day and play being called off is going to be subject to the same kind of scrutiny, justifiable criticism. Anyway, when they finally get on day 4, Bangladesh moved from 107 for 3 to all out 233 in about a session and a half. Muhammad al-Haq, 13th test ton out of all of that. Don't want to brush over the fact that this guy's got 13 test hundreds in 65 matches. That is a terrific ratio when it comes to centuries per match for the left-hander who turned 33 as he was making that century as well. Proper senior pro, the guy who had the captain in Shakib Al-Hassan's absence when he was suspended for all sorts of funny buggers a couple of years ago. Usual suspects for India taking all the wickets, Bumrah, Siraj, Ashwin and Jadeja. India then go bonkers, as you described before. 285 for 9 declared in 34 and a half overs at over 8 per over in a test match. Jaiswal, 72 from 51. Rohit, 23 from 11. Shubman, 39 at better than a runner ball. Kohli, 47 from 35. And KL Rahul with the little ponytail at the back of the helmet too. Sexy, 68 from 43. That's a strong look from KL Rahul.
I love KL Rahul. He's great. He says some stupid things and he sometimes gets a lot of stick and all this sort of stuff, but I think he's great. He's so stylish and
King Legend.
Yeah, exactly. Calling yourself King
Anyone
Legend.
that calls yourself King Legend is okay by me. But yeah, this is where it gets brilliant with the World Test Championship points. They see there's a window to win the match and they absolutely go for it. Bangladesh are inserted again before the close. They're 1 down. It was inevitable they were going to be bowled out early on day 5, I reckon. They were all out. 146, Bumrah 3 for 17. Ashwin, who became player of the series, again 3 for. Jadeja 3 for. And they had 60-odd overs left to get the 98 they required. They did it in no time at all with Jaiswal getting another quick 50 and there with Virat Kohli on 29 at the end. Stats galore. So Roshan Gede at Crickbuzz pulled a few of these together. It's the 8th time that a test match has been won after 2 full days had been lost, which I thought was quite good. The England-South Africa test when the Queen died is the most recent example of that, when they had the first day rained off and the second day was called off. The highest combined run rate in a test match ever. India's run rate for the test was 7.36. The highest run rate before that was when South Africa were bullying Zimbabwe in the mid-2000s that went at 6.8 or something like that. 312 balls for the whole test, the 4th quickest test match ever. And I think most impressively, just the very fact that India have now won 18 test series in a row going back to 2013. They are unbeatable on home soil. And that's considerably longer than the couple of times that Australia had 10 series winning streaks during their era of supremacy. So, India at home, set and forget. And we're talking about the World Test Championship percentages. Sri Lanka, 55.56. Australia, 62.5, and India up above 74. They can't miss the final. Even if they got pumped by Australia, they're making the final.
Yeah, I guess it's worth saying, you're reading out the percentage points and stuff like that. Clearly, the WTC is not perfect. I think we're both fans of it. I think clearly there are flaws. I think everyone would acknowledge that there are flaws, but it's so much better than the previous alternative, which was no World Test Championship. A flawed World Test Championship is miles better than just a rankings table that doesn't really mean anything, because it does incentivize that sort of thing happening. Clearly there still needs to be stuff to work out. Clearly it's no good to have a league table worked out on 2 decimal point percentages, and it's really hard to get your head around until you actually sit and study it, but it's so much better than what they used to be, which was nothing.
Yeah, and look, 9 teams in it. There are ways of making it more elegant. I mean, I would expand it to 10 or 12 and break it off into 2 groups and have the winner of the 2 arms playing off in a final, for instance, but there'll be reasons why some full members won't be as keen on that. But, two groups of 6 playing 5 series as they do at the moment anyway, or, there are ways of doing this, which should be to the benefit of Test cricket, but we will see. Internals in Bangladesh as well, heavy. We've got Shakib Al-Hassan, who's declared that his final Test matches will be those against South Africa in Dhaka, which is his hometown, of course. He said he'll still play one-dayers. So I'm confused about where it all fits in, but no more T20s for him. His Test record's a terrific one, 240 Test wickets and more than 4,500 Test runs, so an elite club that have achieved that double. We'll do that properly when he finishes up, but I think the reality is that he might be finished as a Test cricketer very soon, but he's in the middle of what is a very colourful and eventful life, and he will be in the headlines for many, many years to come.
It's just incredible to think that 2 weeks ago he probably spent a week in a Premier Inn or the Castle Hotel down in Taunton playing for Surrey in the Championship, kind of because he can't really go home at the moment. It's all a bit. A little bit crazy with Shakib, but that's kind of his modus operandi. Also, even though he says it's his last Test, I reckon he is absolutely prime for coming out of retirement age 46, because they need him for some two match series against Australia, where if they win it they'll finish 4th in the WTC, in the amended WTC or something like that. You can see it happening already.
Be still my beating heart. I mentioned before that South Africa are going to play those Tests in Bangladesh. That there was some jeopardy around that because of the goings on in Bangladesh at the moment, but they'll be playing on the 21st of October in Dhaka and the 29th of October in Chittagong. CSA have said they're satisfied with the security situation settling down. I mean, ironically, that's just after when the Women's World Cup would have been had it been in Bangladesh, but anyway, that decision's been made. There are 3 spinners in Temba Bavuma's squad, and I mentioned before that Rabada's there, but now Nortje not. Jansen's been rested, so it's not the full strength South Africa side, but it does include David Bedingham, and we'll talk a little bit more about him in segment 3, but just chuffed to bits that he's getting another opportunity in this full-strength South African setup, not just when they were playing in New Zealand earlier this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's been a superstar, really. I think he was a name that no one in English cricket paid too much attention to when it originally was announced that he was joining Durham. It was like, right, another off-cast South African, whatever, who cares? He's not going to do anything. He'll be back home in a few years' time. And suddenly he's been the leading run scorer in the country. He's been riffing it up in Test cricket at the start. So good on him. I mean, he was even speculating that he might declare for England at one point. So it's great that he's ended up playing for South Africa, I think. But
it's like in the end, it all worked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
As it is for a lot of the guys.
It worked out better than he could ever have imagined, I think, as well. The idea that he would have come over, and I think he came over that COVID year as well, 2020. And the idea that you come over then and make a huge decision in your life. You're in lockdown for the first however long it is, and get to this point that he's in now in his career. It's amazing.
There aren't many positive stories out of Brexit, but David Bedingham, weirdly,
it was all worth it. Blue passports and Bedingham.
All worth it, yeah, that's right. Blue passports and David Bedingham. One quick sidebar on South Africa before we move off them. They were beaten by Ross Adair the other night, and Mark Adair, the Adair brothers, in the UAE in that second T20. So the first T20, South Africa get home comfortably against Ireland. Ireland are hosting this at Abu Dhabi for reasons of finance. I guess the time of year you couldn't host international cricket at Ireland in September and October. But in their second match, Ross Adair, former rugby pro heavy, got Ireland to 195 for 6 after they moved on from friend of the show, Andy Balbirnie, because his strike rate wasn't quite high enough. They wanted someone to really go for it early on, and along with Paul Sterling, look at that.
Yeah, well, the best thing was he wasn't even meant to be playing, I don't think, because Lorcan Tucker, I think the coach or the captain had said a couple of days out, Lorcan Tucker's going to open the batting, and then suddenly, I think he pulled up sore, or he was ill or something like that, and Adair comes in 11th hour and, whacks 100. Nathan Johns, formerly of the Irish Times, was saying that, basically Adair was a bit of a flat track bully to some extent, and it had looked short of his best against the top bowlers that he'd faced in the past. I think Afridi was cited as one of those, but he's obviously done it against. I think Ngidi was playing for South Africa in that team. There was some proper.
And Mulder was playing as well. Like, it isn't it
wasn't full strength, but it was.
Say it's their twos, but it's not their twos.
Yeah,
you've got two guys.
It's tough enough. Yeah,
it's enough.
Great news for him, and a pretty incredible story really with him. Joining his brother in the side, having had his little flirtation with Ulster Rugby. I think playing on the wing. So good for him.
And his brother, Mark Adair, who's been on the final word in the past as well, I should say. Ross's brother took 4 for 31 to make sure of it and to get Ireland the point. So they've squared the T20s 1-1, and they've got 3 one-dayers to come. All right, second and final break on the show, but needless to say, we've still got lots and lots to get through in segment 3.